CTBK gives executives and owners of mid-market businesses unparalleled confidence and clarity so you can focus on strategic objectives and organizational success. Their multidisciplinary advisors, accountants, and team members have a wealth of experience and are all available and responsive to each client to ensure the most effective advice, actions, and outcomes no matter the situation or complexity level. That experience base and one-team approach, combined with integrated and efficient way of operating, enable them to be truly proactive partners, doing the best thing for their client every time. Visit ctbk.com or call 716-630-2400 to learn how CTBK can work for you.
This is Charles Barkley, and you're listening to Tim Graham and Friends. Tim, this is your last favor. Anything else is going to cost you.
Welcome to Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. I'm Tim Graham of The Athletic, here with my co-host Jonah Bronstein of Bronstein Sports Plus. We're going to be joined a little bit later by former Chargers and Bills edge rusher Shawne Merriman. His television network, believe it or not, it's kind of strange to say, streaming network, but I mean, you see it on televisions. Lights Out Sports TV is going to be in Orchard Park on Sunday for a television show, The Ultimate Fan Zone. They're going to be showcasing Bills Mafia as only Bills Mafia can be showcased. And we're going to talk to him about that. We're also going to talk to him about the Bills and where they are this season and playing through potentially catastrophic injuries, which he tried to do as a member of the San Diego Chargers. And Tua Tagovailoa, the Bills' opposing quarterback this week, has been trying to do with the Miami Dolphins. So we're going to get into a lot of different things with Shawne Merriman. But before that, I want to point out, Jonah's still wearing pink. It's November 1st as we're recording this. You're still in pink. Are we in overtime? What's going on here?
It's a tough habit to break. But yeah, I guess overtime is what you could call it. The month of October is over, and October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and the main kind of theme of the fundraiser is to wear pink every day in October and solicit donations for American Cancer Society that way. But the donation page, the donation link, stays open until the end of the year. And the local leaderboard competition, actually, those standings don't lock in until mid-November. So there's still opportunities for people to donate, still a chance for me to move a little bit up in the leaderboard. And for anybody that wanted to donate and maybe just didn't get around to it or was waiting for a check to clear or something like that, there's still opportunities for people who procrastinated or did not have the opportunity to make a donation yet so far.
To get those pennies out of the bottom of the trick-or-treat bag that they got while going door to door, maybe they can scrounge up some change and donate it.
Yeah, maybe you won your bets last week and you got some extra scratch to throw around. But I'm introducing a new color into the wardrobe, trying to match the pink shirt with this nice lavender tie that was gifted to me by longtime listener of the show, going way back to our Facebook Live days when we were on the radio. Ravi was nice enough to give me, this is an official Hockey Fights Cancer tie that he won in an auction a year or two back. And I'm wearing it tonight because it's Hockey Fights Cancer game at KeyBank Center for the Buffalo Sabres game against the New York Islanders. There was my sister, who is undergoing treatment for breast cancer right now, was to be taking part in this Hockey Fights Cancer event, walking the purple carpet with a Buffalo Sabres player and taking part in the activations that they have around this league-wide initiative. She's not going to be there tonight because she's battling an illness. She has surgery scheduled for next week, so we're hopeful that she can get through this illness and not have to postpone the surgery. It's not a great idea to, be going out in public and maybe weakening her immune system in any way. She needs the rest. But I'm still going to be there. I'm still going to be wearing the tie. And I think, I think as writers and maybe some fans, we see these things. They happen every year. They happen for a lot of different causes and a lot of different initiatives. And you might get a little cynical about it. They're not something that you can always write about. It's not always relevant to the game story or the AP story. But I do think it's a very nice thing that the NHL does, that the Sabres are doing, that the NFL does with their crucial catch initiatives. And it reminds me of the importance of professional sports that goes beyond the wins and the losses and the playoff droughts and the team success, is that these are major cultural capstones and events within a community, and having a Sabres game that draws 15 to 19,000 people and all kind of honoring cancer fighters and cancer survivors and working with Roswell Park and fundraising and things like that. And what was offered to my sister and will be offered to other cancer survivors and people battling cancer tonight, to have that kind of memorable experience and get the players involved with that. And they're very gracious with their time and attention doing that. And everybody there gets a special scarf that, looks a lot like this tie I'm wearing. It's a nice thing, and it's nice that professional sports leagues and professional sports teams continue to do that, whether it's fighting cancer or for any other initiatives and things like that. It's nice that when you have professional sports teams or major colleges in your area that are able to do that, to kind of take a moment and kind of recognize how important that is to some fans and people in the community.
How you doing on the leaderboard?
I believe I'm fourth, moving up a little bit. I think it was fifth, but a couple days ago. And I think I know I am within $50 of moving into third. So there is still a chance. I think I'm 1,000 away from second, but I'm kind of moving back up the leaderboard and close. And if there's any of our listeners out here that still want to contribute or really just help me get higher up on that leaderboard, that locks in about 2 weeks, but there's still time to contribute to the cause.
Overtime bidding. If you work it through the finish line, Jonah, I like your chances.
Yeah. Tim, did you get a chance to see my Halloween costume?
I did not.
Well, I'll have to send that to you, and I don't know how your video editing skills are. If you can maybe pop it up on here, or we'll find a way to.
Oh, I can. If I have a still photo, I'll put it up right here as like while we're talking. People are probably looking at it right now.
Yeah. Well, I being that I had to wear pink all month, I chose a pink themed costume, and it was Bret the Hitman Hart. And
wait, that was you? I saw that. That was actually you.
Yeah, that was me. You didn't recognize me in the wig?
I didn't. No, I didn't know that was you.
It was me. And for those that know professional wrestling and Bret the Hitman Hart, and maybe Shawne Merriman later on, we could ask him about this, but his catchphrase was "the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be." So for the theme of the month, I was the breast there was, the breast there is, and the breast there ever will be.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Well, it's a great costume if I can't even tell who you are.
Yeah.
That was good. So who are the Buffalo Sabres, Jonah?
Well, the Sabres are coming off a loss after winning 3 in a row, but it wasn't a terrible loss. They lost to the Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers that had all of their top players, Captain Barkov coming back, and their starting goalie, unlike when they played earlier, when they didn't have those players, when they didn't have Matthew Tkachuk. And the Sabres got beat, and they made some mistakes that cost them the game. A late penalty on Rasmus Dahlin that was very costly, and some breakdowns on the penalty kill and things like that earlier in the game. But
be rough calling out his captain after that game.
Yeah. And then Rasmus Dahlin had already shouldered the blame himself in the locker room before that. And they knew that was a bad penalty and that was maybe a game costing decision. But they lost the game because of those mistakes. For the other 55 minutes of the game, or when they weren't making a few costly mistakes, the Sabres were playing right with the Florida Panthers. They came back from being down 2-0 to tie the game, had a chance to win if they had done things maybe a little bit better in the third period. And it's not a moral victory, but it was a less discouraging loss than some losses that they've had in previous seasons. And we combine that with the winning streak they had and the run of goal scoring that they had. If they are able to avoid that loss snowballing and losing again tonight to the New York Islanders, teams are going to lose games, and you're especially going to lose games to the best team in your division and the team that won the Stanley Cup last year. So there's still things to like about the Sabres, even coming off a loss. Now they're below 500 again, have a back-to-back this weekend, need to win both those games to get above 500. 500 is not good enough to get in the playoffs, so they need to string together wins here to get back into that playoff pace, playoff position. But it's not, unlike a lot of losses that happened even at the very start of the season, there's not a sky is falling feeling when the Sabres, blow a game with some mistakes as they did Monday night.
Because they're mixing in. First off, they're scoring goals. And as long as they're scoring goals, you at least as a fan feel like you're getting some entertainment value, which hasn't always been the case. Watching brutal, low-scoring losses it bruises your soul. And at least now there is excitement. There's reason to actually pump your fist or get up out of your seat if you're at the arena and hear the goal song and the whole thing.
They also played very physical against the Panthers and were hitting back. And once they got down 2-0, kind of punched their way back into that game. And maybe it went a little too far, and that's where Darlene's penalty came from at the end. But they didn't back down. And I think that's something that Sabres fans can maybe hang their hats on a little bit, that the Sabres didn't pack it in and believe that they couldn't win the game and couldn't fight their way back into the fight when they were down 2-0 early.
Yeah, I've been battling the flu, or else I would have been out there earlier this week and probably going tonight also. But yeah, I haven't. I've been watching on TV, but I haven't been around the arena as much as I would have liked. And
well, I haven't missed you, as our readers don't know, but you know, or our listeners don't know. I sit in your seat when you're not there. So sometimes when you show up, I'm happy to see you, but I'm slightly disappointed I don't get to sit next to Matthew Fairburn again.
It's always a bonus. Another sport that is getting momentum. It started. Excuse me. Hang on. I need to hit the mute. I don't even, death is coming for me, I'm sure. But I was amused by a headline I saw from Damon in which they used the word stunned. Damon stuns UB. And I thought to myself, I'll bet you UB wasn't that stunned. So Damon basketball beats UB. A Division II team beats a Mid-American Conference squad that has been to the NCAA tournament in recent memory. And I just found it interesting that but I just don't think that it was a stunner at all. I think if anybody was paying attention, and if you could bet on an exhibition game, I think Damon on the money line would have been a rather attractive bet.
Yeah, I wasn't stunned. I thought Damon was going to win the game. I had some conversations before the game about a hypothetical point spread, and there was a lot of the feedback I got was that if there was a real line on that game, the Division I team at home would have to be favored. But people that know both of these programs and know who's coming back from last year and what each team has, a lot of people were expecting Damon to either win the game or, make it a very close game that any team could win at the end. In some ways, it was closer than I thought it would be. I kind of thought Damon was the better team, and they got an early lead. And then UB fought very hard at the end when they started pressing and had a chance to tie the game and potentially win the game, but didn't make the shots quite at the end. Damon ends up winning by 6. I kind of thought they were about a 3 or 4 point favorite going into that game, but could have won by more points. And Damon is, at this point, an older team with more continuity and more players back from a year ago when they won 25 games at the Division II level. And they lost by 4 points in an exhibition game at Buffalo last year. Buffalo has kind of a whole new roster and lost some players that they didn't win a lot of games last year, but I think some of the players that transferred out or graduated were talented players, and the players they replaced them with are much younger and maybe not as good on the top end, or we haven't seen that yet. So I think if they played again, if they played a series of games, I think Damon would probably win more games than UB would win if they played each other and played in different gyms. But it's still a disappointing result for Buffalo. I mean, the women's team played Damon and they won by 44 points. Division I teams at home in these exhibition games should always win against the non-Division I teams, and it's not encouraging for UB being able to improve from only winning 4 games last year, that they're now, at least compared to Damon exhibition games, 10 points worse than they were a year ago.
Everybody's getting started here. So can you give us a whip around of the local teams, Jonah, and what they're going to do to start their seasons?
I don't have it in front of me, so I can't tell you exactly who everybody's playing. I know the most interesting game to watch as next season starts. I mean, the UB women are going to have a home game on Monday. I think that's one of the only ones locally. Niagara men might be playing the non-Division I team at home on Monday as well. But Canisius opens up at number 10 Arizona, and it's their first game under new coach Jim Christian. Probably not a game that they have a great chance to win. They have a lot of new players and a lot of new things to figure out, but it'll be a good
great chance to win.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say they can't win, but
I'm going to look up that point spread while you're talking, so keep going.
Yeah, well, I mean, even the best Canisius team, or the best Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference team, is going to have a very tough time on the road against a top 10 team. Canisius, with a lot of new players, a new coach, and a lot of new things to figure out, is probably not in a great position to go on the road and win that upset. But it'll be intriguing to see who plays well, how they look, and what this team has under Jim Christian. I got to see some of their practice earlier this week. I think they're going to be rather competitive in the MAC season, but it's not going to be a good record early on because on top of Arizona, then they play at home against St. Bonaventure. St. Bonaventure is probably a better team, but Canisius has won that matchup often in the past, and being at home, they got a good chance. Mercyhurst, that's a game Canisius can win, but they also go to Maryland. They have another bye game at Loyola Chicago. That's a tough game. They have games. They have a tougher non-conference schedule. Jim Christian didn't build up a soft schedule to get a lot of wins early on. He built a schedule that's going to make the team better, make the program a little bit of money. That's what you get a lot of with a game like Arizona, and then be ready to contend in the MAC season. And I'm very intrigued to see how Canisius does with two new coaches in the men's and women's teams.
Jonah, Las Vegas also thinks it's going to be very difficult for Canisius to perhaps pull the upset. I think it would have been a little bit more palatable for me. I wouldn't have gagged if you would have talked about maybe Canisius covering the spread as opposed to going down to Tempe or wherever, not Tempe, at Tucson, if it's on the home court, that is, to going down to Tucson and winning because Arizona is favored by 28 points.
That sounds about right. I think Canisius has a chance to cover. They shoot the ball well. They might be able to get hot, make some shots, and have one of these games where you look and it's 8 minutes in and you're like, wow, it's close. Canisius is putting a scare into him, and then Arizona wakes up and plays like a top 10 team. But a lot of times in these games, you find out really how good the top 10 teams are. If they don't take care of business and beat Canisius by 30 points, that might tell you that Arizona's a little bit overranked. And if they win by 40 or 50 points, it might tell you that they're every bit a top 10 team and maybe should be ranked even higher.
What is the African team that almost beat the U.S. in the Olympics?
Was it Senegal?
Whatever it was. Maybe we'll have one of those. Let's get to Shawne Merriman. He's far more interesting than us.
But not as well dressed.
Well, we don't know that. We haven't seen him yet. We'll see. But I think last time he was on the show, he was wearing merch. I think he was wearing a hoodie. So let's see what he shows up. I'm sure. Well, first off, I'm wearing a t-shirt. You're the only one who's dressed well. So you're putting me down too.
But if you average us together, I'm hoping that it puts us a little bit ahead of whatever Shawne Merriman decided to wear, which could be nothing. He could come to us shirtless, being a fighter, pro wrestling promoter, lights out type of guy.
And of course, you're going with what's being worn right now, not what is in the wardrobe. I'm sure he's got a few things. He probably has one piece of clothing. He could probably pick several different single pieces of clothing that are worth more and cost more than everything in my closet.
Than my house, probably.
Right. All right, so let's take a break here. We're going to come back. We're going to talk to Shawne Merriman about Lights Out Sports TV and the Ultimate Fan Zone coming to Highmark Stadium here on Sunday.
The financial needs of a business go beyond tax and attest services. That's why CTBK goes beyond accounting services and offers outsourced solutions through their affiliation with CFO Solutions Plus. These additional services allow clients to focus on their operational and long-term strategic goals. Trust CTBK's outsourced solutions to provide cost-effective, value-added financial services tailored to your company's needs. Call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400. Or go to ctbk.com to learn more about CTBK's outsourced solutions.
There's a good chance he got drunk during the commercial break. It's Tim Graham and Friends.
Welcome back to Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants, joined now, as promised, by one of the all-time great edge rushers in NFL history, Shawne Merriman, former Bill, although briefly, and maybe a bit in the beginning unwillingly, but he's come around to the virtues and the fun of being with the Buffalo Bills because he's going to be in Orchard Park this weekend, or his show will be. Lights Out Sports TV is his network, which is kind of crazy to say. Shawne Merriman's television network. Lights Out Sports TV has a show called The Ultimate Fan Zone. They're going to be out at Highmark Stadium this week talking, well, for obvious reasons. I mean, there's so much content, right? Shawne, thanks for joining the show. And what can you tell us about your experience with Bills fans? And I'll be honest, and we can get into this. I think that talking about fan bases and who's great and who's the best sometimes comes off as pandering. But I'm finally coming around with the Bills fans in terms of what they put into it, especially making their presence felt in Seattle. You could hear them. You could hear them in Seattle. This is the most infamous place, the most infamous home field advantage. So, Shawne, what's been your experience, and whether or not we're just patting these guys on the head for the sake of, giving them a cookie?
It's funny you said something at the top when you first started. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go to Buffalo, and it wasn't because of the city or anything like that. At the time, I believe they were 0-6, and they had no chance going to the playoffs. They were already basically knocked out of it. Buddy Nix, who's the general manager there, was the second in command and with the Chargers. Buddy Nix actually is the one who drafted me. I know A.J. Smith get a lot of credit for actually drafting me, but Buddy Nix is the one who put me on the map in front of the team. So, I got a call from Buddy Nix when I was, got waived by the Chargers, and Buddy said, "Look, Shawne, you're going to love it here. I know you don't want to come, and all this other stuff, and you're going to love it here. You're going to have a change of heart." And I said, "Buddy, I'm not coming." Right? I told him, I said, "I'm not coming." Finally, after talking to him 15 minutes, he said, "All right, well, if you don't come, you're going to get fined like $20,000 or $25,000 a day." So I said, "Hey, when are you guys sending that jet?" So I sent the plane to me on Thursday, and I landed. And when I got there, I saw something I've never seen before. Look, I love my Chargers to death. Everybody knows that. But the fans in the airport, when I was walking down the street, I remember going down on Chippewa. I was looking for a dinner spot, and fans just walk by you, kind of, throwing up a peace sign and say, "Hey, what's up, lights?" Like almost like you were a second cousin. So I never experienced anything like that. So this Sunday for the Ultimate Fan Zone, man, on Lights Out Sports TV is going to be next level. And you're right, man. I don't think there's any other fan base to compare to them, especially football, but maybe in sports in the U.S.
You went to Maryland, which I don't know. I mean, college atmospheres, Buffalo always gets compared to that because people have trouble placing or how to describe a Bills experience because of the tailgating, the fact that it is a community event. I guess obviously in Green Bay and there are places like that where it happens too. So, but Bills aren't totally unique, but how would you even compare it to college atmospheres that you experienced back in the day?
Back when, because Maryland wasn't the ACC back when I played. So we would go to like a Florida State. I mean, back when they had really, really good teams, and you couldn't see, it wasn't a spot to walk in. You couldn't see anything in the stadium. And the tailgate, and they were out there 4, 5, 6 hours before the game. But ultimately, man, it's something about Buffalo, and I'll tell you why, because I played there and I've finally been around them enough to understand why they are what they are. It is a very hardworking, town where you're very family oriented. When you're born, they place a Buffalo beanie hat on you, and you are a Buffalo Bill coming out the womb. That's who you are. And unlike some of these other places like Vegas, you see at the Raiders games, you got other teams' jerseys. Chargers, they have other teams' jerseys sometimes. It's a melting pot for everywhere. Buffalo and the people of Buffalo, they're there. That's their home. And not very many places in the country are you going to be able to experience that. It is a one of a kind of place. And I said this, man, I honestly wish that every player got a chance to experience that, no matter where you play at, because some of these fan bases aren't that great. You don't get that same reaction. And when you go out there and play for Buffalo, you feel like you're playing for the people. It's the craziest feeling in the world.
Can you tell us what you have cooked up for Sunday before the game?
Yeah, we got a 60-minute live stream tailgating show in the Buffalo Bills parking lot, Orchard Park there, called the Ultimate Fan Zone. We'll be live on Lights Out Sports TV, which is my new free ad-supported streaming service. We got a ton of sports there, 30 different fast channels, 300 sports movies and documentaries, 16 different live sports concurrent going all the time. But this Ultimate Fan Zone, the reason why I wanted to create this is because I feel like that is the game before the game, right? Like everyone can sit back and watch the actual game, no matter where you are in the world, but nobody can watch the tailgates. And we all know that tailgates create the biggest FOMO. Everybody's like, I wish I went to the game because I wanted to go to the tailgate. And I wanted to bring all these Bill fans, man. And I was in North Carolina about a month and a half ago or 2 months ago in North Carolina. And there's Bills bars, there's Bill backer bars everywhere out here in Vegas and North Carolina. So what we wanted to do was everyone who couldn't make that tailgate that their cousin was at, or their best friend, or their mom or dad, maybe somebody stationed in the military across seas who wanted to actually be at a tailgate. Now you get an opportunity to be there. And so it'll be three former hosts, before a couple former hosts. You got the cooking aspect of it. You got the RVs, the cribs type of feel. You got the game, the cornholes, the music, the fun. And so there's different aspects of this show that's never been done before. And we're happy to bring it. We'll also be shown in 90 airports as well. It'll be live in 90 airports as well.
What's your general feeling on super fans? We just saw one last night. The Jets were on television. Everybody got to see Fireman Ed, whom I personally hate. I shouldn't say that. He sure does make my eyes roll. You know, super fans, there's different categories of super fans. I don't know. What's just your general sentiment on the look at me super fan?
I think you need
celebrities.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. That's why you need them, because they're a celebrity in their own right? Because everything they do, they sleep, eat, and breathe that team. And so they become the face. When you think about fans, right? Think about the Raiders. You don't have a single person there at the Raiders you think of. You think of the face paint, the shoulder pads with spikes on it, the scarves and pirate look. They have a look when you think about the Raiders. When you think about the Jets, regardless if you like them or not, who do you think about your man, Fireman Ed. That's right, Fireman Ed. So you think about the Redskins, they had their fan out there. You think about certain teams, the Lakers, who do you think about? When you think about the Lakers fan base?
Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson, right? And so every fan base needs that number one fan to put a face to what they're doing. So I think it's needed, man. Some people might make a little cringe. I think it makes it great because these guys become personalities and superstars of what they're doing.
Jonah, anything on Lights Out Sports TV and the show? You asked you asked it before we got rolling. I thought it was the most important question of all.
I did want to know, I was a little confused when we were introducing this, if this was a new event or how it related to some other things you've done or tried to do. I know you were here in town promoting an MMA event last year, and then there was something that didn't happen. Maybe you can explain a little bit about what was planned there and didn't happen, involved, tables and Bills Mafia and things like that.
Yeah. I set up a slam fest in the parking lot. And there were actually people who signed a petition to get slammed and signed waivers. I think there was a few hundred that signed up, and I was going full steam ahead. This was when, I was working with the WWE, and some fans, someone said on Twitter, man, I would pay for you to slam me through a table. And I was like, yeah, sure. You don't have to pay me. I'll do it. And before you know it, it was request. And at this time I was working with the WWE. So I said, man, this might be kind of cool, crazy, but cool. That didn't fly too well with the team. They didn't want Shawne Merriman slamming people, even though it was, we had permits and waivers and everything was legal. They still didn't want it to happen. I think they don't want to be associated with that type of thing too much, but it's a part of the culture. We've all seen it on the videos and social media. It's a part of the culture, but also too, man, it's why they're known as the most passionate fan base in football for sure, but maybe in sports in the U.S. I mean, they really all have that prestige about them. But look, if the team was open for it, I will be in 100%. Even right now, Sunday, they can all sign up Sunday, and I would do it in a second.
The table jumping it's not a new phenomenon, but it's newer than when you played here in Buffalo. What was your reaction to kind of seeing that, knowing how Bills fans were, but then kind of seeing how that culture had evolved over the years.
Yeah, it started to happen. So what happened with the Bills is that they would have too many people there. They would have 100,000+ people go to the tailgates, but the stadium only sits, I think, 60 something or maybe 70,000.
Mm-hmm.
So there were extra 30,000 people. So what they did was they started limited to the people who had tickets to the game, right? They started cutting it off. And then it started to turn the corner and got pretty rowdy with people getting slammed through tables and everything like that. But ultimately, man, there's so much more to go on in that parking lot. I think the slamming of the tables and jumping off the trucks and everything like that, that's social media bait. But man, these guys gear up like you wouldn't imagine. As soon as those doors are let open where they can even come into the parking lot, they're there lined up first thing in the morning. So this is next level. And now everybody's going to get a chance to see not a snippet, right? We're not trying to show 30 seconds or 2 minutes. We got 60 minutes of nonstop, fan engagement, fan interaction, personal stories. We're going into RVs. I think Jim Kelly's going to stop by. We're talking to Thurman Thomas, some of these legends. Trying to get Bruce Smith in town. I'm definitely trying to get him there if I can figure out a way to get Bruce there. But yeah, this has never happened before, and we were hoping to kind of bounce around to different teams, for the rest of the year, and then definitely next year work with all teams.
Shawne, what are your thoughts on the Bills so far? Here we are entering week 9. I know you follow the game very closely.
Yeah.
And prior to last night anyway, the Jets somehow were favored over the Houston Texans. I couldn't believe it. A 2-6 team over a 6-2 team, and they beat the brakes off of them. So maybe the Jets have some life, but prior to last night, the Bills had as many wins as the rest of the division. What's the picture in your mind regarding the AFC East and the Bills?
They're the best team that no one's talking about, in my opinion. And it's really how they're winning. And nothing against, obviously Stephon Diggs, it's like a little brother to me, went to University of Maryland. Josh Allen, in my opinion, is not worried about getting one wide receiver to football this year. He's spreading the ball around. And that is a tremendous amount of pressure for any quarterback to know you got a star wide receiver that you need to get him touches every single game. It just seems like that pressure's off. They're having a lot more fun with them. They're playing better in 3 phases of football. And the only difference is I think that they're not getting the credit for how they're winning these games this year. They're just not. Everybody's talking about the Chiefs and talking about these other teams, but they're not getting the credit for how good they are. And by the way, that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. I would, sometimes prefer that you be a really good team to fly under the radar than a team that is good that everyone wants to knock off each and every week, your bulletin board material. So there's no doubt in my mind they're going to win the division, but more importantly, they may be the ones, you might see a Bills, a KC AFC championship game. I think another wild card, my Chargers, man, if they find a way to squeeze in the playoffs, those type of teams you don't want to play. Jim Harbaugh, where they're running the football, playing great defense, just going to grind it away and then hit a big play down the field here and there. But more importantly, man, these Bills, they're just not getting the credit for how they're beating people this year. And like I said, that's not a bad thing.
What's it like when you mentioned Josh Allen? What's it like as a pass rusher going up against someone like him who he's sometimes better moving out of the pocket and being under duress and getting, to his right? What's it like when it's almost like you don't want to get too close to him because you kind of bring out his superpowers if you push him away from the pocket?
It's so annoying, man. It's so annoying because I used to call the quarterbacks that I played against, like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and all these guys, I called them Statue of Liberty. I love the Statue of Liberty quarterbacks who just stand back there, who can't get outside the pocket. But Josh Allen has this weird combination, man, where he's a running quarterback, but he has that size and that physique of a massive guy, and he's physical. He'll jump over you and then lower his shoulder down, try to run over guys. You typically don't want your quarterback doing that, but his body can sustain those hits and he can deliver it. And whenever he extend plays and start rolling out to his right, that's when he gets the most creative. So in a sense, you almost rather him stay in the pocket. You almost rather him drop back, that 3 to 5 step drop, and then bull rush a guy where he can't get inside or outside. He can't release inside and outside. That's what I would do against a guy like Josh Allen. I would force him to stay in the pocket. But also, too, man, you got to force him to stay in his face where he can't step up. That is one of the biggest things. If he step up and get a chance to roll to his right, that's when he gets very creative. And I would just really focus on my pass rush lanes against somebody like him.
Shawne, I wanted to ask you about the quarterback on the other side. The Bills are playing the Miami Dolphins, and Tua Tagovailoa is back from his latest concussion. And it reminded me, and this is coincidentally, this is before I even knew that you and I were even going to be able to connect this week for this podcast. This is Monday. I recalled a story that I worked on in 2008 for ESPN about you. And it was in September, and you were going to go into that season in 2008 and play on a knee with 2 torn ligaments. And people were wondering, why is this guy going to do it? What are the ethics on the other side of the ball? Do you go after it? Do you try to play straight up? And reminded me of a few quotes, and I'm going to read them to you because my contribution to the story, they asked a bunch of writers to go out and talk to different people. And one of the people I thought to talk of back in 2008 was Bob Kuchenberg, who is borderline Hall of Famer. He's, in fact, I think he's a finalist on the latest cut for the senior committee for this year's nominees. The great guard who played with a broken forearm in the Super Bowl, had a big rod in his arm, played with it anyway. Back when the Dolphins won it all. And he said this: you have to go after it. You've got to do what's best for your team. You've got to do your job. You may not say exactly go at his knees, but if that player has a weak link, that's what you have to attack. I remember Dick Butkus was pretty limp, dragging his knee pretty badly the only time I got an opportunity to play him. It was late in his career. We were champions already, and the Bears were pretty bad. Everybody knew we were going to win by a big margin, and he was my brother Rudy's roommate. So when we were watching films, you could see that if you wanted to own Butkus, you could take him out at the knee. But I told myself, nope, I'm going to go high. I'm going to take him on like a man. The first time I tried to do that, it wasn't very enjoyable. And every play after that, I was going right for that knee. Football's a tough game. It's his body, and may God's will be done. Your thoughts on back in 2008, the knee was the most sacred body part of any athlete. It's flipped now. It's the head. It's your brain, and rightfully so. But what do you think are the things that go into play for you as the player, owning your decision to play with a problem? This is your body. You get to do what you want. The team obviously has some say, but the other team has some say too as to how they go about it. How would you go walk us through that?
Yeah, I think in my case, for one, it was a PCL and LCL that I had done. So it wasn't like my MCL or ACL. And you can play with those things, but it is extremely painful, and your knee is unstable. It's like a table with 3 legs on it. It moves, shifts up and back like a rubber band. It's pretty terrible. The question was for me is that I finished up the year on that same knee that I went to the Pro Bowl on, and All Pro on, and also finished wherever I was in the Defensive Player of the Year on. And so when I went to go see Dr. Andrews and 2 or 3 other doctors in the country, everybody gave me this feeling like they didn't want to touch it because they just saw me have 2 sacks, right? That was the word. It was like, hey, we don't know. I mean, you look pretty good. If we go in, you're going to be out for 8 months or so. So if I got the surgery when I first injured it in the middle, it was a Tennessee game in 2007, whatever week that was. I was cheap shotted, but if I would have did that, then I would have missed a good portion of the following year. And so that was my decision because I play on it. I feel like I can keep going out and producing, but I do run a risk of long-term damage. And in that game, we've had that one game I did play in against the Carolina Panthers. They did get a penalty for a high-low. I had an offensive tackle was blocking me up high, and I had the running back come and chip me straight directly to my knee low. So that play is still there. So I'm not saying that they targeted it or not on purpose. I wouldn't say that they didn't either. But I'll say this. If you got a guy, let's take an offensive tackle that we know that his right or left foot and he can't kick slide out there, you're going to start doing things to make sure that he puts pressure on that bad leg. You're not going to go out there and when you're bull rush, just go for his knees. But if you know a guy is injured, you're going to go after every weakness you possibly can because that's what this game is about. You're supposed to do that. That's no different than a defensive offensive coordinator see a player who can't cover or can't catch or can't run a certain route. You're going to force them to do the things they're not good at. No different than injury. So if you know a guy can't move, or if you know a guy hand is jacked up, or his wrist or finger, and he can't bend it, he can't put his hands on you, well, you're going to rush right down that pass rush lane because you know he can't put his hands on you. So there's I think the wording of it always gets confused because people think that, hey, we're going to go out and try to injure his knee. If that offensive guard goes up and he's blocking Dick Butkus, why wouldn't he go chop block him to his knee? It's not taking his knee out, but if you know that he can't bend down or he's not mobile because of his knee, why wouldn't you chop block him?
I guess the reason is, like, is there some kind of code where if a guy is that hurt that you give him a break?
I don't know. There's no breaks. You're trying to win. That's what this game is about. And I know it sounds cruel or harsh, and people say, "Oh, that's not right." You're not trying to injure a guy. You're trying to win. And however you need to go out there and win that game or win that play against that player, that's what you do. So I don't doubt him at all. Who wants to hit Dick Butkus up high when you know he's hurt down low and he can't? No one wants to do that.
But what about a head injury?
Yeah, well, I mean, the head injury. So take Tua, for example. And I just got a chance to speak to Tua's parents a few weeks ago because his younger brother Tulia went to Maryland, University of Maryland. So got a chance to speak to his parents, and I just told him to just take care of himself, be smart. Ultimately, he has to make the decision no matter what. People can't make it for him. I think that people are going to have their opinions, which they're allowed to have, but more importantly, it's his decision to go out and play. As a defender, I am not thinking about it. Let me go out here and slam Tua on the ground. If I go and sack him, and he hits his head off the back of the ground, then so be it in a way. I'm not trying to do it, but I'm doing my job. This 4 quarters, this 60 minutes that I'm playing, by any means necessary, am I going to go out and win that play and win that game? So I'm not thinking of, I'm going to lay Tua down softly, right? Because I don't want him to hit his head. But if I go out there and I got a chance to hit him and put a big hit on him, then I'm going to do it. So other people might take that wording and say, oh, well, you're trying to target. You're not trying to target. You're playing football. And if you can't play football the way it's played, then you shouldn't be playing it. So I think that Tua knows that. I think he made a conscious effort in the decision to go back out there. I think part of that decision has to be financial, right? Because he has such a big guaranteed contract. I think the other side of that is he feel like he can still go out there and play. But I want to say this. I do believe that at some point in time, if he continues to go out there and continue to have these concussions, either the team or the NFL has to step in. And they have to be the ones to say, hey, this can't happen anymore because, for one, we could be liable, right? I mean, if he has problems 20 or 30 years down the line because of these concussions, or maybe sooner, the NFL could be liable. The second part is the team could be liable, right, for letting him go and these doctors clearing him to get back on the field. I'm sure there's been some kind of waiver or something happen where it say, hey, look, you're making this decision. We advise you not to go back out there. You're making this decision to go, so we're not liable for anything that happens after this. If I'm the NFL, if I'm the team, I would 100% do that. His concussions has been too public for us not to make a decision or make some kind of have some kind of protection for that to happen. So, I think he's right, man. I think you go out there and give it one more shot. He has the type of money, generational money on the table that can last him and his families for years and years and years to come. I think it's worth the risk. And I'll say this. I think that all of us as players, especially when you start to get into the collegiate level and the pro level, we all know that we are not walking from the game clean. We know that. You're going to have a wrist problem. You're going to have a back problem, a hip problem, a shoulder problem, knee, finger, toe, something, neck. You're going to have something. But I think the reward for it is so high that I think all of us is realizing that, hey, maybe we go out and take the risk for us and our families and so forth. But for anybody to say that we don't know that we're going to walk away from this game banged up in some form or fashion is just not telling the truth.
For the Bills defenders who they were all on the field when Tua had his most recent head injury, and a lot of them were on the team a couple of years ago when he had maybe his first injury that started this concussion history. Does that maybe play even subconsciously into anything with the Bills defenders trying to avoid being the team that ultimately does this to him over and over again?
Just to add one more injury, I think it was AJ Epinesa who broke his ribs So I know we're talking about the head injuries here, but
Yeah.
his worst
No,
injuries
I mean,
happened. I mean, I don't know if he's going to have flashbacks, but yeah, the Bills have really hurt this guy.
no, but look at this. I mean, Hamlin, that wasn't even a tough tackle. It wasn't vicious. It wasn't physical at all. And so there's much more things that happen more physical than that on the field. And for Tua, and that, again, this is the scary part about his concussions in general, but mainly the last concussion, because it wasn't a helmet-to-helmet collision. It wasn't a knee-to-helmet collision. This was a regular standard football play that happens 100 times a game. So when you look at that and the way that goes, that's what's the most scariest. Some of these concussions he had when he kind of went back and hit his head off the ground, those things are expected, right? Because you can't control that. Those are brutal. Those are the most brutal concussions because you got the soft spot in the back of your head and you can't control how hard your head hit the ground. Against Hamlin, that wasn't even a vicious tackle. Nothing physical about that play happened. He still got a concussion. I think that's the most worrying part and concerning part about him playing.
I talked to Damar Hamlin at his locker stall after that game, and because I even apologized. I said, "Look, I think I even wrote this in the first line of my column. Is Damar Hamlin shouldn't have to be the spokesman for almost dying on the field for the rest of his career, but the juxtaposition of him being the one who made the otherwise routine tackle when he had his cardiac arrest after a routine tackle, and here's a quarterback now who's facing a potentially life or death decision on whether to play again." And I interviewed Damar Hamlin about being that guy, and I was really encouraged for his sake that, and I think it's because he's gone through so much therapy since his cardiac arrest in dealing with why me, should I keep doing this? And he can then apply that to Tua Tagovailoa and come away with it with some sort of groundedness that maybe the average player wouldn't, because most players, face it, they don't go through therapy like I'm sure Damar Hamlin's been going through for the last year and a half. But anyway, I did think that he did shed some light on that. And real quick, because I know Jonah has a question about UFC and the concussions there and what you've learned. Where do you land, Shawne, on the player? You mentioned by any means necessary. Where do you land on the player that doesn't, or that does maybe go ahead and go after it? You can be dirty within the bounds of the rules, right? Like you can do something that's above and beyond that is still within, that's not a 15-yard penalty, or maybe you go ahead and take the 15-yard penalty.
Yeah, but those are just dirty players. I mean, you got those, and they're going to be around for as long as the game is going to be around. You got those handful of guys, those 2 or 3 guys. It's just dirty players no matter what. And I'll use a prime example of the D tackle from the Saints who kind of wrapped up Justin Herbert's leg and literally heel locked him onto the ground. I mean, that's a dirty play. No matter how you want to look at it, they say it wasn't, but that was a dirty play. And is there going to be somebody out there, a group of 11, some guy to say, hey, he got concussion, I'm going to light him up? Yeah, for sure. But I don't think the intentions as the team, right? They're not in the huddle, breaking the huddle like, hey, let's go get Tua, right? It's not one of those things where it's a targeted situation. And that's why I was kind of I separated, because when you talk football, sometimes people automatically associated with targeting, right? Our job out there is go out there and inflict as much pain for 60 minutes as to our opposing opponent. That's what we do. And so if that's hitting someone and knocking them down or whatever, or knocking them out legally or whatever the case is, and that's what we do. And I think that, when you get outside the locker room, you get outside the organization to the real world, to the regular world, and you start talking like this, it sounds very much like targeting, right? So I don't think anyone is planning on going out there and hurting Tua. I don't believe that. But I think that you got a couple guys saying, we don't give a damn, right? You got those that we don't care whether he's hurt or not. We're out here playing football. If you can't play football, get off the field. And so you always got a few of those guys.
Shawne, what kind of perspective have you gained after your NFL career from your time in the fight game, fighting yourself and promoting fights, about head injuries and concussions and things that you've learned, more later in life?
Yeah, I think, for me, in owning MMA organization, Lights Out Extreme Fighting, I'm forced to sit into a lot of these, regulation meeting with commissions, state commissions, and the big meetups they have where all the commissioners from all the states come in one place. They just had one in Vegas not too long ago that I attended. And all those talks there, talks happening there where the doctors and the scientists and all that, they come and give more information on head injuries and concussions and how to protect, better mouthpieces, some of the protocols that might change, some of the things that some of these guys have to do that might have had a concussion. And in fact, with MMA, which is crazy, it's less of that because there's more knockout punches or knockout, and there's kicks and wrestling. So there's less head trauma in the future than a lot of other sports. It's the repetitiveness of, like boxers, right? 12 rounds of just beating the hell out of each other. And you do that over a 30-year period, then yeah, you can have some problems. But also too, I think that people love bringing this up because you might have one or two cases that's extreme, right? That's very, very extreme. I do believe in CT. I think CT is real. I think the head trauma is real. But I also think that you have a combination of a couple other things that go on that can really amplify that head trauma, the brain trauma that you might have. And so, yeah, I don't, like I said, the information is there. You can't deny that it's real. But I do think it is blown up in some ways, some way, shape, or form. But when we see things like Tua in this public, we've seen him actually knocked out at least 3 times on national TV, maybe 4. Knocked out cold, where his fingers are clenched and he's stiff. And so when you have that out there like that, now the talk of concussions and CT are more prevalent than ever.
Shawne, I neglected to ask. I just want to go back real quick. When you played just the one game in 2008, what was the deciding factor when you said, all right, that's it?
My knee swelled up so bad after. They would have had to drain it, and it would have had to happen every single week is what they told me. And so the pain I can play through, actually, I was still performing. I had a decent performance. I could still burst off the ball and do a lot of things. But when they got to the point of telling me that we're going to have to drain your knee because it was the size of a watermelon. They said, we're going to have to do this each and every week. And some days you're not going to be able to practice. So there was a lot of restrictions to me going forward. So I decided to do it. And, if I can go back and do it now, I would have done it right when it happened. But again, I went out and played, and I had, when I set out a game or two, and I came and finished off the rest of the season with almost 13 sacks, and no one wanted to touch it, right? Who wants to go and fix a knee off of a guy that's coming off of an Pro Bowl season? And so if I can go back and I knew what the repercussions was long term, then I would have definitely looked at those things of doing it immediately.
Tackle for a loss and a quarterback hit. Not too bad without a couple of knee ligaments.
Yeah, I mean, that's I could have done a lot more damage, but it was a decision that was tough for me because I've never missed any extended period of time. And so that was probably the hardest for me to do, to accept the fact that I wasn't going to be able to play.
Taking a look at who was the quarterback. Was he one of those statues you were talking about?
Plummer. No, I'll take that back. DeLone. It was DeLone.
Okay. As I say, Plummer could move a little bit.
Yeah, it was DeLone. Yeah, so I had a statue back there.
All right. Hey, Shawne, thanks for doing this. Once again, Lights Out Sports TV on Sunday will be at Highmark Stadium for the Ultimate Fan Zone. It's first season of that show. They've been out at SoFi Stadium with the Chargers, Sean's initial team, and now they're going to dip into the Bills Mafia for, dare I say, I don't want to be so totally disrespectful to the Chargers fans, but I think that probably a little more passionate content Sunday in Orchard Park than in Los Angeles.
Yeah, you can say that, man. It's Bills Mafia, and I think it's worldwide now known that everybody knows that they're the biggest and probably best fan base in sports, at least in the U.S. So, yeah, this Sunday is going to be massive. Also, we'll be in 90 airports as well live. And I can't wait to see the Bills family, man. It's been a couple years.
Shawne Merriman, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks to everybody out there for listening or watching. Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants.